love, sacrifice, and sometimes the wrong decisions become the defining moments of our lives. In this heartbreaking story, perhaps no one will forget Eduardo Suarez, a man everyone admires for his success and status. But what no one knows is that behind this polished exterior lies a man trapped by inner conflicts, repressed emotions, and an unrelenting desire to break free and truly find himself. Many of us sometimes wonder, do we really find happiness when we achieve everything society expects of us? A stable job, a perfect family, a bright future. But have you ever felt emptiness inside, as if a part of you has been lost, even though everything on the outside seems perfect? That's the feeling Eduardo Suarez faced throughout his life journey. The story begins as a lesson about sacrifice and heartbreak, but it is also a warning for anyone who relentlessly chases after what is deemed legacy, without understanding the true meaning of happiness. From the perspective of a man under immense pressure from his family, Eduardo decided to throw away the one person who truly loved him, Isabella, just because she couldn't give him a family as he had hoped. To him, it seemed like the ultimate sacrifice because he had to prioritize the family name above all else. But what truly happened? Behind this decision to discard Isabella, was it merely the loss of a marriage? Or did he also lose everything that truly mattered? What Eduardo didn't realize was that this decision not only took away the love he once shared with Isabella, but also led him into a battle with himself. A battle that not everyone is brave enough to face. This story is not just about one wealthy family. It is about all of us, who live in a society where we are pressured by expectations. The question lingers, can we truly live authentically? Or are we simply puppets in a larger drama that society has written for us? At the heart of it all lies the simple yet profound thought. No amount of wealth or status can fill the void left by love, compassion, and the emotional connections we often take for granted. The story of Eduardo and Isabella prompted me to reflect on whether we value these expectations and our social image too much, at the cost of real human connection. It is easy to get swept up in the desire for success or to meet the legacy of our families, but can we find peace if we sacrifice everything else in the process? Every decision comes at a price. However, the price Eduardo paid wasn't just the loss of love, it was also the loss of himself in the whirlwind of power and ambition. After his heart-wrenching decision, Isabella began a new life, filled with challenges but also hope. Meanwhile, Eduardo, though surrounded by wealth and status, soon realized that these things could never heal the emotional wounds he had caused. This narrative serves as a powerful reminder that happiness cannot be bought. Sometimes the very things we chase in life, success, approval, legacy, are the things that lead us away from the very meaning we seek. In the next section of this article, we will dive deeper into the journeys of Isabella and Eduardo, exploring the untold stories behind every decision they made. We'll uncover the profound lessons about love, sacrifice, and, above all, the search for happiness. This is a story that isn't just about two individuals. It is about each of us, trying to find meaning in a world that constantly asks us to choose between legacy and love. Stay tuned as we continue this emotional journey, because this is more than just a tale of broken hearts. It's a story about the choices we all face and the question that lingers. Can we truly find happiness when we are forced to confront the toughest decisions of our lives? As Eduardo Suarez stood at the peak of success, it would have been easy for anyone to believe that his life was a perfect fairy tale. Money, power, a grand family name, and an impeccable reputation. Yet, beneath this facade of the ideal life, was a man consumed by a sense of duty he never asked for. Born into the Suarez dynasty, Eduardo was conditioned from an early age to embrace the expectations of his family and society. The ambition to live up to the Suarez name was not something he chose, it was thrust upon him. As a young boy, Eduardo was raised by a mother, Mariana Suarez, who embodied perfection in everything. A woman who believed that emotions were weaknesses and that her son's life was merely a vehicle to carry forward the Suarez legacy. Mariana's influence on Eduardo was both undeniable and suffocating. Her pressure to conform to the standards of success in their social circles began early. What Mariana wanted for Eduardo wasn't just a wealthy heir. She wanted someone who would never stray from the family legacy, no matter the cost. But what Mariana didn't know, or perhaps refused to understand, was that the more she pushed Eduardo into this perfect mold, the more she stifled his true desires and emotions. It wasn't enough for Eduardo to be a man of success. He needed to become an ideal, a reflection of his mother's ambitions. And in this perfect vision, there was no room for love or personal happiness. Enter Isabella, a quiet and humble woman who, despite coming from humble origins, captivated Eduardo's heart. She represented everything that Eduardo was not: an escape from the pressure, a breath of fresh air in the otherwise stifling environment he called home. Their love story was one of gentle beginnings. Simple dinners, shared dreams, and laughter that filled the spaces of their otherwise rigid lives. But Isabella's presence in Eduardo's life was far from ideal in the eyes of his mother, Mariana. She was seen as beneath the Suarez legacy, unfit to carry the family name. And yet, Eduardo defied those expectations. He chose Isabella because, in his heart, he believed love could conquer everything. But could love really defy the weight of generations? Could their happiness stand a chance against the pressure of an entire dynasty? As much as they tried to fight against the tide, it was not long before the absence of children began to cast a shadow over their marriage. Children. In Mariana's eyes, the absence of children meant the death of the Suarez legacy. A family without heirs, she reasoned, was like a tree without roots, a doomed existence. These words, repeated time and again, began to take root in Eduardo's mind. He could no longer ignore the unspoken expectations, the silence in their home, the emptiness that lingered as they failed to build the family legacy his mother so desperately wanted. These became the most potent reminders of his inadequacy. Isabella, too, felt the growing distance between them. She saw the pain in Eduardo's eyes, the emotional withdrawal. The marriage they once built with so much hope now felt like a distant memory. There was no longer room for their love to grow. Eduardo's silence became a barrier, one that neither of them could overcome. And soon the only thing that mattered was the legacy, a concept that had consumed their lives and love. The breaking point came on a cold, quiet evening in the Suarez mansion. Eduardo, standing at the height of his career, a man of wealth and influence, made a decision that would haunt him for years to come. His love for Isabella, which had once felt like a breath of fresh air, was now a burden. To Eduardo, it wasn't just a failure of his marriage. It was a failure to meet the expectations of his family. So, in a move that seemed almost inevitable given the weight of his mother's influence, Eduardo made a decision. He cast Isabella aside. The reasons he gave for their separation seemed logical, necessary, even, but were they? He claimed that their marriage was a sacrifice for the greater good of the family. He told Isabella that she was no longer the woman he needed. In reality, he had never asked himself the question: was the family legacy worth the cost of his own happiness? Isabella, devastated by the words that came from the man she loved, packed her things and left. Her departure wasn't filled with drama or anger. It was the quiet resignation of a woman who knew that love alone couldn't hold a family together when the weight of societal expectations bore down upon them. She had become a casualty of the Suarez name. Isabella's journey, from heartbreak to resilience while Eduardo's life continued in a whirlwind of events and societal expectations, Isabella's path was less glamorous. She moved out of the mansion and into a modest apartment, where she found herself grappling with a new reality, a life that was far from the opulence she once knew. Yet, in this new reality, Isabella discovered something that Eduardo had long since abandoned: strength. Though she faced hardships, Isabella never gave in to despair. She refused to let the bitterness of her situation define her. Instead, she began to rebuild her life brick by brick. She found a job, made new friends, and slowly learned to live without the man she thought she would grow old with. But even more importantly, she learned to trust herself again. In the quiet moments, when she reflected on her past, Isabella understood something crucial. Her dreams, which had once been abandoned in the name of family and legacy, were still hers to pursue. And so she began to craft a new future, one where she would no longer be defined by the rejection of a man who couldn't see her worth. As the years passed, Eduardo's life continued along the path his mother had set for him. His career flourished, and he maintained the Suarez family name with pride. But no matter how many social events he attended, how many business deals he closed, there was always a feeling of emptiness that followed him. An emptiness that no amount of wealth or success could ever fill. He had lost something much more valuable than his marriage. He had lost his own sense of self. While he kept up appearances, Eduardo was haunted by the decision he had made years ago. The regret, the guilt, it gnawed at him. His success meant nothing if it wasn't shared with the woman he loved. And then, something happened that would change everything. Eduardo saw Isabella again, though she was no longer the woman he once knew. The sight of her, now a mother of two, caught him completely off guard. The children, two boys, both with eyes that mirrored his own, stirred something deep within him. The moment Eduardo laid eyes on Isabella and their children, he was confronted with the reality of his choices. How many milestones had he missed? How many moments had he allowed to slip through his fingers in the name of family duty? Eduardo was now faced with the consequences of a decision he could never take back. After years of success and social accolades, Eduardo Suarez stood at a crossroads in his life. The external signs of achievement remained, but the internal void he carried was undeniable. The wealth, the prestige, and the power that had once driven him were no longer enough to fulfill him. His ambition, carefully shaped by his mother's unyielding expectations, had guided him through the majority of his life, but now it had left him with a profound sense of regret. Eduardo's sudden encounter with Isabella, along with the revelation of their children, jolted him into realizing just how much he had sacrificed in the name of family legacy. The emptiness he felt wasn't a result of losing money or status. It was the loss of love, the loss of a life he could have had if he had chosen differently. The children, Felipe and Lucas, were a living reminder of everything he had chosen to walk away from, a tangible consequence of the choices that shaped his path. Redemption is not something that happens overnight. It is a long and painful journey, a willingness to confront one's past, accept the mistakes made, and take responsibility for the consequences. For Eduardo, this was a truth he could no longer escape. He had built his life on the expectations of others, a path that left little room for his own desires and dreams. Now, for the first time, Eduardo was forced to look inward and ask himself what truly mattered. Isabella's role in Eduardo's redemption as Eduardo navigated this journey of self-reflection. The one person who held the key to his redemption was Isabella. Yet, she was no longer the same woman he had left behind. Over the years, Isabella had grown into someone stronger, more independent, and more confident in her own skin. While Eduardo had spent his years trapped in the gilded cage of his family's expectations, Isabella had fought to reclaim her life and sense of self. Isabella had raised their children with love and resilience, and now, Even though Eduardo was seeking redemption, it wasn't his forgiveness that mattered most. It was her trust. Could she ever trust him again after everything he had done? Could she allow him back into the lives of their children, knowing that his absence had already shaped their future? For Eduardo, this was the ultimate test. He had to confront his own mistakes and admit that the love he had abandoned wasn't just something he needed to reclaim. It was something he had to prove he deserved. And that meant rebuilding the trust he had broken, not just with Isabella but also with the children he had never known. Eduardo's first step towards redemption wasn't grandiose. It was quiet and humble. He knew that he had no right to demand anything from Isabella, no right to expect her forgiveness, nor her acceptance. Instead, he sought to understand her journey, her pain, and the sacrifices she had made. One of the most powerful moments in Eduardo's attempt to make amends came when he sat down with Isabella. The conversation was not confrontational or dramatic. It wasn't about defending himself or blaming anyone else. It was an honest conversation, one in which Eduardo acknowledged the mistakes he had made, the pain he had caused, and the fact that he had chosen the wrong path. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He simply laid his heart bare. The way Isabella responded to him was not immediate. She had spent years rebuilding herself, and while part of her still held onto the memories of their love, she was no longer the same person. Trust was not something that could be granted easily. Forgiveness wasn't something Eduardo could ask for. It was something he had to earn. It would take time, patience, and most importantly, consistency. But despite the painful history, there was still something between them, a glimmer of the love they had once shared. Isabella listened. She allowed Eduardo the space to express his regrets. And while she didn't rush into forgiving him, she did open a door for the possibility of healing. When Eduardo first laid eyes on his children, Felipe and Lucas, he was overwhelmed with emotion. The faces of his sons, reflecting his own features, brought him a deep sense of both joy and regret. These children were the embodiment of the future he had sacrificed, the love and connection he had lost in the pursuit of a legacy that no longer mattered. But redemption wasn't just about acknowledging past mistakes. It was about changing the course of the future. And for Eduardo, this meant stepping into the role of a father in ways he had never considered before. In the early days of reconnecting with his children, Eduardo didn't expect things to be easy. Felipe and Lucas were still young, and they had grown up without him in their lives. They had been raised by Isabella, who had provided them with all the love and stability they needed. Eduardo's entry into their lives wasn't about trying to be the perfect father. It was about making up for lost time. He had to show them that he was there for them, not because he had to be, but because he wanted to be. The time Eduardo spent with Felipe and Lucas was not about lavish gifts or grand gestures. It was about the quiet moments, drawing with Felipe, helping Lucas with science experiments, and simply being present. In these small moments, Eduardo found something he had never experienced before: true fulfillment. As he spent more time with his sons, Eduardo realized that this was the legacy he had always wanted, one built on love, care, and presence. No amount of power or wealth could ever compare to the joy he felt in these quiet moments with his children. This was the real legacy, one he would create with his own hands, one that would not be defined by the pressures of his mother's expectations but by his own choices. Eduardo's journey was not just about rebuilding relationships. It was also about breaking free from the chains that had bound him for so long. As he began to focus more on his family and less on the Suarez name, he realized that the pursuit of legacy had kept him from the things that truly mattered. It had blinded him to the importance of love, personal happiness, and authentic connection. His decision to step back from his role in the family business and delegate responsibilities was met with resistance from Mariana. She couldn't understand why Eduardo was choosing to leave behind the legacy she had spent her life crafting for him. For her, his decision to prioritize family over legacy was a betrayal. But for Eduardo, it was a step toward true freedom. In the end, Eduardo's decision to distance himself from the relentless pursuit of status and wealth was not a rejection of his past. It was an acceptance of the need for change. He no longer needed to prove himself to anyone but himself. Eduardo's story is one of transformation. It is a tale of a man who once sacrificed everything for the sake of a family name, only to realize that the most important legacy he could leave behind was the love he shared with his family. In choosing redemption, Eduardo chose authenticity. He chose to rebuild the relationships he had once abandoned and to create a future where love, not legacy, would define his life. The lessons from Eduardo's journey are clear. True fulfillment comes from within. We are not defined by the expectations of others or by the legacy they impose on us. We are defined by the choices we make and the love we give. Eduardo may have made mistakes, but his journey proves that it's never too late to make things right. Redemption is not about perfection. It's about owning our mistakes, learning from them, and striving to be better every day. In the end, the legacy that mattered most was not the Suarez name, but the one Eduardo created with Isabella and their children. One built on love, understanding, and a commitment to each other. And that, in the end, is the truest form of success. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it thought-provoking, make sure to hit that like button. Your support helps us reach more people with these important stories. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of our future videos. Feel free to share this video with friends or family who might find it inspiring. We love hearing your thoughts, so leave a comment below telling us what you think about Eduardo's journey and what you would do in his shoes. Your feedback means the world to us, and it keeps us motivated to create more content just for you. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.